Good morning and welcome. I'm Joseph D'Amico, Superintendent of the New York State Police, and I'd like to thank all of you for coming today. Since taking office, Governor Andrew Cuomo has made keeping motorists and pedestrians safe on New York's roadways one of his top priorities. This year, New York State has taken a series of actions to combat a dangerous issue on our roads that we're all too familiar with: distracted driving. On June 1st, the governor directed the Department of Motor Vehicles to raise the penalty for texting while driving or for using your cell phone without a hands-free device to 5 points on your license for any conviction. A month after that, on July 1st, the governor spearheaded and signed a new law which strengthened penalties for distracted driving for young and newly licensed drivers. This new law brings the penalties for probationary and junior license holders who text and drive in line with the penalties for our most serious offenses. This includes speeding and reckless driving. All drivers, and particularly our younger drivers, need to recognize that the road is no place for this dangerous habit, and that the penalties for breaking the law are serious. With these new laws and regulation in place, the governor turned to law enforcement throughout the state and asked us to put them into action. The New York State Police was directed to step up enforcement all throughout the busy summer vacation season. This is a time when driving volume is usually at or near its peak. Throughout the summer months, you may have noticed, the state police had a visibly increased presence on our roadways with more troopers patrolling. And to specifically combat texting and cell phone use, there was a less obvious presence through the use of these unmarked vehicles. This crackdown, which began last July 4th holiday and continued through Labor Day, resulted in enforcement numbers that were a 365% increase over last year's enforcement during that same period. 365%. This summer, the state police alone issued 21,500 tickets, which far surpassed the 5,200 tickets issued last summer. This represents over 21,000 motorists who are clearly risking their lives, their passengers' lives, and the safety of many other motorists while they drove distracted. It's through education and enforcement programs such as this that we could provide protection and safety for New York motorists, and we could prevent avoidable accidents from happening in the first place. More importantly, it's helped us to get the word out that New York State has a zero-tolerance policy for texting and distracted driving. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Thomas Madison, Executive Director of the New York State Thruway Authority.
Thank you, Superintendent D'Amico. Good morning, everyone. As you've just heard, under Governor Cuomo's leadership, New York State is at the forefront of cracking down on distracted driving, particularly on the use of handheld devices while behind the wheel of a car. While tough new penalties and heightened awareness have helped get the word out about not texting while driving, today we're taking additional action to make our highways even safer from distracted driving. New York State operates dozens of service plazas and parking areas and pullover sites along our state highways and along the entire Thruway system. And today we're announcing that all of these sites will officially become texting zones. These texting zones will enable drivers to pull over and return phone calls or answer text messages in a safe, comfortable area where they don't have to take their hands off the wheel or their eyes off the road. We will designate more than 90 of these zones on our highways in every corner of New York State and put up nearly 300 specially marked signs to alert drivers where texting zones will be located. The signs will be 5 miles and 1 mile ahead of each texting zone, allowing drivers to ignore that telephone ring or that text beep and keep focused on the road. And yet you can still respond to your messages in a safe and timely fashion when you get your vehicle pulled over in a texting zone. As we know, distracted driving is very, very dangerous, and it's already taken far too many lives. These texting zones are another important part of Governor Cuomo's ongoing efforts to put drivers first and to make our highways safer in the process. And now I'd like to introduce you to a local advocate who has also fought very, very hard to stop distracted driving, Ragvika.
Good morning, and thank you, Governor, for inviting me to speak today. My name is Patty Ragvika, and I'm from Ballston Lake, New York. 4 years ago, my son and I were in a car accident that changed our lives forever. It was July 2009. I was driving my son to his golf lesson. We were at a stop to make a left-hand turn when we were hit by a large SUV going 60 miles an hour. The woman who was driving was clearly distracted. Thankfully, my son fared well, a few scratches and sprained wrists. I was not as lucky. I broke my nose, fractured my neck, hurt my shoulder, and was left with a traumatic brain injury. I spent months in therapy, even learning how to speak again. To this day, I still have physical limitations, and it has been very stressful for our family. But 4 years later, as you can see, we are doing well. I have become a personal trainer and a wellness coach, not only to heal myself, but to help others along the way. After the accident, I started the Drive campaign, realizing we need to raise awareness and spread the word that we cannot be distracted drivers. I've spoke at schools to hundreds of students talking about the consequences of distracted driving and what can happen if you take your eyes off the road to send one text message. Putting down your phones can make all the difference. My son today is 16 years old and he is starting to drive. He will never text and drive. He has learned that the hard way. That is why what Governor Cuomo has done these last few years and what the state continues to do is so important. 4 years ago, there were no laws to enforce or penalize a distracted driver. The driver who hit us left with a slap on the hand. With the tougher laws put in place since the governor took office, we have come a long way since then. Today, police can pull over someone solely for using their phone, texting, and driving. We must continue to send a message to all drivers that we cannot text and drive and use our cell phones behind the wheel. I am so proud to be part of this effort, and I believe we can save lives. Thank you for having me, and now it is my honor to welcome the Governor of the State of New York, Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. First, to Patty Ragvika, we thank her very much for taking the hardship that she went through and making it a positive. And we can imagine how hard what you went through is for you and for your family. But we're grateful and we're in admiration that you took that negative energy and you put it in a positive place. David, thank you for being here with us today. David took off a little bit from school. He's going to go back to school right after this. He asked me to speak quickly so he gets back to school. I was going to speak quickly anyway, David. Superintendent Joseph D'Amico, we thank him and the state police for the great job that they do every day. Tom Madison and the officials from the Thruway Authority, it's a pleasure to be with them. The message is straightforward. We just have to communicate it. Distracted driving is a major problem in this state, and it is a problem that is getting worse, and it is a problem that costs us lives. Period. It's that simple. 1 out of 5 accidents today is attributable to distracted driving. 5 times more fatalities from distracted driving than from drunk driving, believe it or not. Just think about that. The numbers are getting worse, not better. We have 3 times more distracted driving incidents than we did 7 years ago. 3 times more. Why? Because as the new drivers are entering the pool, the numbers are going up. And this is a problem for all ages, all drivers. It's especially a problem for young drivers. Why? Because they are the generation of the cell phone, of the electronic device that's in their hand that they use constantly. I have 3 young ladies at home, and I see it firsthand. They've been on it almost all their lives. It's their connectedness. And they get in the car, and they just continue that pattern. They are attached, affixed to the electronic device. They start driving. They don't really have the skill set that you get with wisdom and experience behind the wheel. And it's a dangerous combination, their use of the electronic device and their inexperience behind the wheel. So the numbers are getting worse as more and more young people are starting to drive. And if you look at the expectation, the numbers will continue to get worse if we don't do something about it. The more young people become drivers. What do we have to do? We have to change our behavior. So how do we start? We change the law. And you heard Patty speak about this. We've changed the law. It is now a primary offense, distracted driving, which means what? Which means you can ticket a person just for the distracted driving. It was a secondary offense. It's now a primary offense. We raised the penalty. It is now 5 points on your license. 5 points is a lot of points. 11 points, and you can lose your license. So 5 points is a significant number of points with a $150 fine. And once you have the law with serious penalties, then you enforce the law, and that's what you heard from the superintendent. 20,000 tickets issued. At the same period of time last year was 5,000 tickets. So the state police are diligently enforcing a strict law that targets just this behavior. What else can you do? You can come up with creative ways to remind people and make it easy for people, and that's what today is about and what the Thruway Authority is announcing. We're going to have 300 signs that remind people, don't text and drive. There are 90 locations when you add up all the rest areas, service areas, etc. on the affected roads, where you can pull over and text at a rest area, at a service area like this one. That's the intelligent way to do it. And the signs will say, it can wait. Because that's the whole message. It can wait. Why? Because it can. It really can. I had this conversation with my 18-year-old the other day. I know she needs to know right now. She needs to know right now. But trust the person with a lot of gray hair and a lot of years. 5 minutes really won't make a difference. It really won't. It can wait. And if you wait until you're in a rest area, service area, you literally may be saving someone's life, and the life you save may be your own. So this is yet another effort that I think is going to make a difference. The signs themselves, reminding drivers. We're using what they call the variable message signs now that are all over the state, once again reminding people that this is now a primary offense, and it's a significant one at that. To people who say, well, you can't change behavior, I disagree. I'm also old enough to remember when nobody wore a seatbelt. No one wore a seatbelt. They were in the car. They were in the car. When you would clean out the car, you'd find the old Cheerios stuck right in the crevice with the seatbelt, but nobody wore seatbelts. Now, it's second nature. Now you get in the car and you button up. But I remember when no one wore seatbelts. I remember the first seatbelt law in the state of New York was signed by a governor. His name was Mario Cuomo. I remember it was a very controversial law, believe it or not, when he signed the seatbelt law. This was a terrible infringement of government coming into your car. It was going to have drastic effects on people's lives. It was going to wrinkle your clothing. It was terrible. It was traumatic. Now it's second nature. Everybody puts on their seatbelt. What we've done with drunk driving is really amazing, and drinking and driving. There was no such thing as a designated driver. The culture was the exact opposite. The behavior was the exact opposite. You went to a restaurant, you had a couple of glasses of wine, you drove home. You went out on a Friday night, you went to a bar, you drove home. There was no such thing as a designated driver when I was growing up. If there was, I didn't know about it. And now we actually made such a difference, we brought those numbers down so far that distracted driving is more of a problem than drinking and driving. So we changed behavior with seatbelts. We changed it with alcohol in the vehicle. We can change it with texting and driving. And the faster we change the behavior, the more lives we will save. The faster we change the behavior, the more lives we will save. And that's Patty's point. This is deadly serious. I'm sure we're going to come to a point where they'll say, can you imagine there were times when people would actually text and drive? How crazy was that? The faster we get there, the more lives we save. And we're going to do everything that we can do to make sure we save as many lives as possible. Thank you for being here.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I'd like to thank you for being here. This concludes our program. Please get home safely.